48 or 45 days remaining till the launch of Guild Wars 2. Hi guys, and welcome to the Great Guild Wars 2 Countdown. For today, the footage in the background comes from Eduardo, who's got entirely Guild Wars 2 videos, 4 videos on their channel, all PvP stuff, which is pretty cool. I'm going to put up some spirit weapon stuff, because honestly, that's the main reason, if I ever did, why I'd play a Guardian, and I've just not fiddled about with it at all. So there'll be some spirit weapon spec Guardian stuff, and possibly something else, depending on how long I ramble for today. The next thing on my list for features to remind us about for Guild Wars 2 is the no gear treadmill. This is the idea. Again, a lot of these are kind of the big, wide-reaching innovations or changes ArenaNet have noticed have you made recently that we're talking about. So this idea is that in MMOs, most of the time, when you get to end game, the developers will just force you to continuously repeat content over and over and over again so that you get greater and greater rewards each time. It's very luck-based and it can be very frustrating, and after a while it's very boring and you don't really realise you're not having that much fun playing the game because you just start to focus so much on the gear. This is the idea of a gear treadmill. You just got to keep running and keep going up and up and up. And then when an expansion comes out, it's probably the entire thing's going to be undermined anyway, because you can then find gear even better than that from, you know, playing proper pro for ages and ages and ages in PvE really easily when an expansion comes out. But this is an idea that's in many MMOs. It's a pretty solid thing that MMOs do, to be honest. It's to solve the problem of keeping people playing and thus paying their subscription fees. There is always going to be a point with any game, no matter how big it is, and MMOs are big games, but no matter how big they are, eventually people are going to feel like they've run out of content, especially in games where you can out-level content. So you might not have even seen all the content, but because you're at the end of the game, you don't feel like you should go back and do some of that earlier stuff. So to solve this, traditionally MMOs have made you repeat stuff over and over and over again, difficult stuff, so that eventually you get better gears, and you just want that extra +1 on your stat. Well, with Guild Wars 2, partly I guess due to the fact that there's no subscription fee and no requirement that people keep playing once they finish the content, and partly because all of the content will always remain accessible to you in PvE at the end because you downscale, Guild Wars 2 doesn't actually have a gear treadmill. There will be this element of repeating stuff to get other gear if you want, but that's all purely cosmetic, which I think is quite nice for a few reasons. Not just because some players will feel like they're missing out because they don't have max level gear, but also in regards to balance for high end stuff as well. You can assume everyone by the time they're level 80 or shortly after reaching level 80 will have kind of max level gear, and because you can assume that, you can actually balance a lot of content with just the right difficulty instead of assuming everyone might have different tiers of gear or stuff like that. So it's something cool that Guild Wars 2 is doing. It's something that means that the game will not become like a second job to you. You will continue to be a player that only plays for what's fun, and as soon as you've ran out of stuff to do, you won't feel some unnatural compulsion to continue playing, and hopefully people will appreciate that and understand it and maybe just come back with expansions. They don't need people to continue playing. So it's a bit of an innovation. It's a difference. It's something that I'm sure has only come about due to the fact that ArenaNet do not want to charge a subscription fee for the game, and in many people's opinions, it's a good thing. You can find more information in the description down below. With that done, got a few questions for today. I'm still planning on maybe doing the server thing, fingers crossed, so we won't interrupt the countdown with server stuff for the rest of this week. So we'll do more questions today. Before I go into like the main meaty ones, there's 2 questions that I've been getting from pretty much everyone ever, okay? And I thought I should at least answer it on a video because I keep typing it, and I basically don't have an answer for this. Everyone keeps asking me what guild I'm going to be in, or whether I'm going to create a guild in Guild Wars 2, and also what server I'm going to be playing on. Truth is, I don't know what guild I'm going to be in, and I don't know what server I'm going to be playing on. Probably I'll be on the same server as a lot of my friends from Guild Wars 1 are going to be in as well, so I'll probably be hanging out with them, but I'm not even sure they 100% know what server they're going to be in yet. I will announce it once I'm actually in-game if you guys still want to know at that point. But right now, I'm not too sure, and I'm not too settled on one server or the other right now. I'm really not. I'm pretty open, so I'd rather not settle on one too quickly because I genuinely don't know. And the same can be said for guilds as well. Now that you can be in multiple guilds, it's not in my interest to create a guild just for like YouTube or anything like that. I find being a guild leader is just a complete pain in the ass. I spent a stretch of my time in Guild Wars 1 trying to be a guild leader. It was kind of put on me when one of my old communities broke up, and it was just it was not fun for me. I'm not interested in that kind of thing. I might, having said that, if there's going to be like a YouTube guild out there or something, when I get in game, eventually I might join something like that, but I don't know, and I want to keep it so that I don't know at the moment, because if I wasn't doing any of this, I would just be any other player going into Guild Wars 2 and seeing what would happen. I'd meet people around around, and slowly I joined guilds and formed friendships like that. And I am planning on doing the same thing with Guild Wars 2. I haven't got anything set in stone, and I just want to be able to go in game and see what the game has got to offer me and what comes my way. So yeah, I don't know at the moment, guys. A lot of people are asking that. I just don't know it, but I will tell you when the time comes on the channel. Don't worry about that. But beforehand, just pick whatever server you want to play on. That's all I can say. Anyway, to the other questions, Chess Rook 44 said something that kind of was reasonably interesting to me, because I found his perspective on this whole thing to be very odd. He says, so here's a question for you. With the new looting system, anyone gets loot or experience for a kill, just so long as they participated. While this effectively completely kills any ninjas stealing your gear, I wonder that the system will cause a rise in leechers. I myself accidentally leeched in the last beta when I tried to complete a skill challenge, failed, went off to do other things, only to 20 minutes later get a message that the skill challenge was completed. Do I have an opinion on this? Well, that happened to me as well. I think that's a little bit of a shame. I went off and fought a really difficult boss, and I know Magical Mike did the same thing as well to the Titan skill challenge that's in the char starting area, and failed to kill the boss, left, and then later on a group of people or someone quite high level must have come along and killed it, and I got completion for it because the game remembered that I participated in that event. The game actually treats those fighting an enemy skill challenges as events. They'll actually contribute for your daily bonus and stuff like that. So in the game's eyes, they're events. They're just very short events that you trigger, and once you've completed them, you'll get a skill point for a reward. Now, I do think it was a little bit cheap that I just got it. I failed completely, but somebody else then went off and did all the effort, got this boss from 100% health down to 0 without me being anywhere near there, and I got completion. I think that is a bit of a problem and does need to be fixed. I think that you should actually have to earn the skill points. Otherwise, you could, in theory, I suppose, if you really wanted to go to every single zone, instigate a fight with a boss, and then make it hostile, fight it a little bit, and then just wander off. And then eventually when it dies, everyone else is going to do the work for you. In theory, that might work. I don't know whether changing zones, or obviously there must be a certain period of time whereby if it hasn't been killed, you will lose any progress you might have made against that so-called event. But it could, in theory, work that way. In any case, exploitation possibilities aside, I just think it's a bit of a shame, because I failed against this boss that I was fighting, and I thought, right, well, I'm going to go level up, and I'm going to feel awesome. I've got a goal now, and I'm going to go and I'm going to fight it, and it'll feel awesome when I finished killing him. And that would have been something quite fun. But then it was kind of just taken away from me. Now, I was happy at the time because I was going for 100% completion. I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. But I did miss out on that. That wasn't something that I'd earned, and it wasn't a nice little thing that I could look back on when I was at level 80, say, and think, right, what did I struggle with, go away, and then I came back and conquered. And that just didn't really happen. I'm wondering how frequently this kind of thing happened in Guild Wars 2 in the betas, because if it's quite a rare occurrence and we've just been kind of lucky, then maybe no changes need to be made, and you can just take a really lucky occurrence like that and be like, oh, top trumps, and be happy with it. But if it's happening really often, then yeah, maybe it should be fixed. As to the rest of your question about leeching, I've never considered that that might be a problem. The only time leeching in theory could be an issue is if someone's standing on an event, flicked an enemy, did a tiny inconsequential amount of damage to one enemy, and then just stood around doing nothing while the event then scaled up to accommodate for their presence. If that was happening, then maybe leeching would be a problem, but I've always maintained that right now Guild Wars 2 actually seems pretty good at recognizing if someone's participating in an event or not. Not all of the events scale well, some of them scale terribly. If there are 2 people participating in one event, it could make it 4 times harder. But actually, when it comes to figuring out whether someone is helping out in the area or not, the game does seem to be quite good. There are other scaling issues aside though. So leeching, I can't say is a problem. Yes, I'm happy that there's no more kill stealing or waiting around for certain things to respawn, and I think that's enough for me. I don't care if somebody just waits around and hits a mob a couple of times and also gets experience for the kill. What does that matter? That's a bit childish to care that other people are putting in slightly less effort than you did on a single kill and now complaining about leeching. And also the idea of accidentally leeching, I wouldn't worry. You've not negatively impacted anyone else's experience by also getting progress on that skill point. Really, the only person whose enjoyment's been impacted there is your own, because you don't get to go and fight it yourself, which, as I said earlier, is a little bit of a shame. But yeah, it's an interesting perspective. I never considered that people might be upset that someone else gets credit for a kill that they've made. I mean, is it really going to be a big problem? I certainly don't think so. The next question is from Ninja Plectrum, who said, hey WP, I just wanted to know what your thoughts are on Guild Wars 2's dialogue cutscenes over the traditional cutscenes we're all more accustomed to. In my humble opinion, I feel they are a bit wooden. I see what you did there, as you do not see all of the characters taking part in the conversation, and the characters you do see don't even face each other. Well, I think they do face each other. It kind of has that preschool play vibe, but for its crudeness and how adorable it is. While it has its upsides, less development needed, I can't help but feel disappointed. I agree with you, Tom. I do agree with you here. I'm disappointed with the dialogue cutscenes. Now, we have seen that they do have that work in progress symbol on all of them up in the top right hand corner. But now release has been announced, and it's making me look at a lot of these things a second time and wonder how much we can really expect them to change. And with so many of these little cutscenes all over the game, I don't think we can expect a massive change. I think we're going to have this same kind of very, as you say, wooden experience of these cutscenes. And in many ways, I do regret to say it, I think that these are worse than the Guild Wars 1 cutscenes we had. Guild Wars 1 cutscenes were flawed and limited in many ways. They had all kinds of problems with pets getting in the way of cameras and minions all over the place and people being attacked during cutscenes, just a plethora of issues, but they were still pretty good at showing you a wide range of things that characters could be doing. There was a lot of freedom with the devs to have characters in various situations while talking, and some of the cutscenes that they're doing here and trying to use them for this many situations are just really, really hard to get a hold of. I mean, if you've got 4 characters in the same conversation and you can only display 2 of them on the screen at once, that's a big problem. People are flicking around all over the time and it looks really unnatural and odd. And a lot of the time I'm taken out of the cutscene because I'm wondering, right, okay, so I'm talking to this character, but I know that there's 2 other characters out in the background somewhere. How are they going to swap them around? And I start wondering what ArenaNet are going to be doing to swap what characters in and where, and when someone's going to disappear and when someone's going to reappear. And it completely takes me out of it. Now, there are limitations obviously in that they only have a certain amount of emotes and only have a certain amount of things that they can have the characters do while talking. But after a while, it all feels the same and it can break the pace terribly. Some quests that you're doing, you might be getting attacked or something in your personal story and something quite dramatic's happening, but then all of a sudden this cutscene pops up and you're totally taken out of the moment and you just kind of sat there thinking, oh, come on, I want to get going. I really honestly would prefer if 90% of these cutscenes weren't there and just all this dialogue took place in-game while I had full control of my character and could run around. Those don't detract from the scenario or the situation that's happening at the time in the story. They don't feel so wooden because obviously you're focusing just as much on your own character as how these 2 characters are facing each other and stuff. But where the cutscenes that they've got at the moment is so centered, like your focus is entirely on the characters with their limited animations and their limited lip syncing and how they're facing each other and when they're zoning in and out, and because that's all your focus is going on that, it does feel a bit disappointing to me. I'm sorry to say it. It's a shame because Guild Wars 1's biggest problem was ArenaNet were great at establishing a setting and they had a brilliant story that they'd written, but they did not get that story across to the players well enough at all. The game didn't show it, so people didn't get that into the lore. Now with Guild Wars 2, there's a lot more voice acted stuff, which is great and that should help in a lot of ways, but if the primary way that we're going to be experiencing the storyline is on a generic abstract background that doesn't necessarily reflect any of the environments around you, and then just 2 characters barely feel like they're having a natural conversation, if that's the primary way we're seeing the story, it's not going to pan out too well. I don't think it's going to go that well. There are obviously other cutscenes. There's the cutscenes that you get when you create your character and when you go into the dungeons, but past that, they're a very small percentage of the overall game, so it remains to be seen whether they can pick up the slack or not. I'm being very negative about this actually, and maybe it's not bothering me as much as it's coming across right now, but it is something that I've got my eye on and I'm a bit of ashamed. As I say, there's a work in progress tag on them at the moment. Maybe it will change a lot, but how much can we expect? I don't know now that a release has been announced. I really don't know. Inevitable033 posted a comment that said, in 2 totally unrelated questions, which I both liked by the way, do you know what happened to the saurian creatures? I've searched and can't find any except many species of raptor. Perhaps a meteor or flooded when Zaitan rose? Second question, what's with these Lagos things? Butterfly assassins, who came up with that one? Well, about the saurians, these guys, if you're not aware, in Guild Wars 1, around the Tarnished Coast in Eye of the North, ArenaNet introduced dinosaurs. Dinosaurs were enemies. They lived around in that area and there were loads of them. You had your T-Rexes and you had all kinds of stuff. It was really, really, really cool, and raptors were one of them. Guild Wars 2, we've only got raptors, which is kind of a shame, I suppose. There's been no lore about where the dinosaurs are at all. We might still see them on the Tarnished Coast when we get to see that in the beta, but from the videos that have come out, it doesn't look like they're around there, which is a shame. I was hoping for some more dinosaurs. I liked that about the Tarnished Coast, and I like the idea of being in a starting area but fighting these giant dinosaurs and stuff around in Guild Guild Wars 2. That would have been cool, but it seems like they're just not there. Maybe they didn't have the resources to have that type of enemy. How much enemy variety we can really expect extrapolating from that, I don't know. But as you say here, there are lots of raptors. Raptors look much better in Guild Wars 2, I think, actually, with the feathers and stuff. Really cool. I barely even noticed they had feathers in Guild Wars 1, and now in Guild Wars 2 they are pretty damn cool. So that's awesome. Speaking of enemy variety, your second question, these Lagos things, yeah, they're a new race. So they didn't have time to put in dinosaurs, or they didn't want to put in dinosaurs for Guild Wars 2, but there are these Lagos things. Now, until you mentioned this, hadn't heard of these or understood anything about these. But if you look on the wiki, you can see that you meet one of these, at least one of these, up in the Norn area. Not the Norn starting area, but the next one up. And they are involved in a certain event chain to do with the Kodan and one of their sanctuaries. And there's an assassin that comes out of nowhere. And it's these Lagos. They look really, really cool. So I think that they're supposed to come from the oceans like the Quaggan do. So they're kind of an underwater race, but they can exist on land as well. And yeah, they're a part of this event. That's really interesting because they've had no blogs about them, and ArenaNet haven't mentioned them at all, as far as I'm aware, not in any big way. And now here they are in game. So maybe this is one of those races that will just come out of nowhere and surprise us at the launch of the game. Will they have a big part of the personal story or stuff like that, or will they just walk around? Who knows? But this, again, now that this is another new race, do keep an eye on these things, because these could be candidates for playable races at some point. Depends if they do like an underwater expansion-y type thing eventually, which they might do considering we have the deep sea dragon. Who knows? Anyway, there you go, guys. That was the Great Guild Wars 2 countdown for today. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow, another day closer. See you next time, everyone.